is a presentation of Sertoba Media and Comey Media Incorporated.
Well, the wild card round really wasn't so wild. And then we got to Sunday night. You're watching Total Football Talk. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to another edition of Total Football Talk, the 72nd, if I'm not mistaken. Hard-hitting news, grind, and action, and fun, and analysis just the way you like it. I'm one of the co-hosts of this program, Cole Johnson, a.k.a. the mad scientist and the EP of all EPs. And I am this week, I missed him, you missed him too. I'm joined by the other co-host of this program, Mr. D. Will in the Evening, Mr. In or Out Sports Debate, Mr. Commanders Grind Report, and he's going to be real busy this week. That's right, your boy and mine, D. Willie, a.k.a. Drew Willingham. How you doing, my brother?
Hey, doing great out here. Glad to be back here with you this morning there, sir. And, you know, the sensei was resurrected this past week. As, you know, we had another edition of Extra. Right. And we had Vicola on there. And I got to click the button several times. It was a great Friday. It was a great weekend in football action. But even better to be here with you today, my man.
Oh, well, it's good to have you here, man. It is good to have you. And Dante, we're going to talk about your Eagles. I hope everything's good with you, my brother. Yes, we'll get to your comments, Playmaker. I agree. Very cute. But we will start with the opening drive.
All right, let's go. We got trips, right? At 42, 989. On two. Ready?
All right, we will touch. Well, before we begin, we will preview tonight's game between the Vikings and the Rams in the desert, and more likely there will be an extra that will feature that later in the week. However, we'll touch on the other 5 games that took place this weekend, starting, well, with the Saturday evening tilt. So you had the AFC North rivals, Pittsburgh Steelers on one end, the Baltimore Ravens on the other, M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore, the site. And if you saw the game in December between these two teams in Baltimore, it basically was more of the same. The Ravens basically took control of the game from the beginning, and they did not let go, for the exception of maybe 2 or 3 plays by the Steelers offense in the third quarter. This game was a snooze fest, 28-14. The game wasn't that close, and the final score is not indicative of how dominating a performance the Ravens had in this one. Lamar Jackson, extremely pedestrian for an MVP candidate. 16 of 21, 175 yards. He did throw for 2 touchdowns. He also had 15 carries for 81 yards. Derrick Henry was, to me, the star of the show in this game. 26 carries, 186 yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. And of course, I mentioned 186 yards from Henry, 81 yards from Jackson. Those two, combined with a few others, and this is not a misnomer, the Ravens rushed for 299 yards on the ground. 299 yards on the ground. On defense, not to be outdone, Nandi Madubuike, he had a tackle for loss, he had a pass defense, he had a quarterback hit, and 2 sacks of Russell Wilson. He led the way with 2 of the 4 sacks that the defense got of Russell Wilson. Now, I'll start with the positives. He didn't throw a pick, so you have that. He didn't even lose it on a fumble. I give him credit for that too, but he was 20 of 29, 270 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also had 3 carries and 6 yards, and he was running for his life much of the way throughout the contest. George Pickens. Yes, there was a George Pickens sighting. Probably the best game he's had in about 2 months or so. 5 receptions, 87 yards, a touchdown, and a pass interference on his own, which it would have been more than that. To give you an understanding as to how dominating a performance this game was, the touchdown to put the Ravens up 14-0 in the second quarter. 13 plays, no passes, all of them runs. That should tell you how this game went. Your thoughts on the Ravens going into the divisional round with a dominating performance over their arch rival?
The running game definitely was the big part of their win in this game because, Lamar Jackson definitely didn't have to do a whole lot with his arm. And, shout out to Dante, Russell definitely did show up. And that was pretty much it for the Pittsburgh Steelers because their defense could not contain the run and their offense couldn't even get the running game going, really. Because, Najee Harris, their leading runner had 17 rushing yards on the day on 6 carries. So, and Russell Wilson was their second runner of the day. So,
right.
And they tried to, get Justin Fields in there for a play or two, but it just didn't work out. It worked out a lot better for the Commanders in Sunday Night Football, which we'll get to that here in a little bit. But especially when you're trying to incorporate multiple quarterbacks into the system. But when it comes to this game right here, Lamar Jackson definitely didn't have to do so much, but he did enough because Derrick Henry ran the ball for nearly 30 times and nearly 200 rushing yards in this game. That big play by Likely later in the game definitely helped set things up to end in the favor for the Ravens. But I would say this game was more of a testament to the Steelers' inability to stop the run, their inability to get the run going, and the time of possession working in the favor for the Ravens as well because they literally had the ball for twice as long as the Steelers did. And as we saw in multiple games throughout Wildcard Weekend, how much the time of possession really plays a factor into who's going to win the game and who's not. But they've got to figure things out on this offense when it comes to their running game. That's something that they've struggled with throughout the 5-game stretch that they've lost consecutively. They need to figure out their running game because although Russell was doing pretty good in this game throughout the 4-game stretches before where they were losing, they weren't having, I would say Russell was doing okay, but he wasn't playing like this well in that 4-game stretch when they were losing.
No.
And now you have a game where it's lopsided in the fact of you can't run the ball, but you're able to pass the ball, and there's no balance at all. You got to be able to lean on something when it's not going right. And even though you're able to lean on your running attack, the fact that you couldn't establish any type of possession because you couldn't run the ball, that's what hurts you the most. And you still only lost by 2 touchdowns when it felt like you were losing by 3 or 4 the entirety of the game because it wasn't until later in the game when you started scoring. So looking at this for what it is, at least Russ didn't turn the ball over with interceptions. Like you said, at least there wasn't any fumbles. But the one thing that I'm looking at is there were more opportunities for the Ravens to convert on 3rd down. There wasn't as many for them to convert for the Steelers because of that running attack. The fact that the Ravens had 29 first downs to the 11 for the Steelers is absolutely redonkulous too. And the fact that you allowed, as many sacks as you did. The penalties also mainly hurt you too in comparison to where the Ravens only had 14 penalty yards in comparison to the Ravens in comparison to the Steelers 41. So putting all that into perspective, they got to straighten that out this offseason. They got to figure out who's going to be their quarterback for next year too. I don't think Russ did too bad to not deserve another go around next year.
Right.
But you need some help on that offensive line to establish your run a little bit, because you have not had
Yes.
a great offensive line this year. It's not as bad as Carolina was for 3/4 of the year, where they had human turnstiles over there, from what you were
Right.
calling them. And they're definitely not as bad as what the Commanders' offensive line was last year in Washington. But just going to show how a piece or two and a subtraction of one or two and an addition of one or two can make a difference, like it did for that franchise, to where they won 12 games this year. If the Steelers can jump on what the Commanders did with how they revamped their offense, and they really don't even have to do as much work as the Commanders did last year, I think they'll be in a good place next year. But they got multiple questions that they got to answer. Who's going to be the head coach next year? Who's going to be the quarterback next year? And what are they going to do besides those two pieces to improve the entirety of this team? The Steelers definitely, I feel like, were a better matchup for the Ravens in the wild card than any other team that they could have put against them. Because had you put the Chargers or the Texans or even the Broncos against the Ravens, I don't think it would have been this close to the game. I think they would have got absolutely smacked by 3 or 4 touchdowns. And you can admit that, being a Houston Texans fan. If you take away how the Texans played this wild card weekend, how they have been playing for the majority of this season, and you put them against this Ravens team when they're as hot as they were in this game, you're going to lose by 3 or 4 touchdowns. You have to at least give the credit to the Steelers defense, because even though giving up 28 points seems like a lot, I don't think that any other team would have held them to any other less of amount of points. The way that this team was firing on all cylinders with their rushing attack alone, you cannot expect to score only 28 points. I was expecting to put up like 40 plus points when I was seeing these numbers rack up throughout the game on the ground, with King Henry bulldozing through. This team's nasty. And they've got a promising future beyond this year if they can stay healthy, but it's not looking good for who the Ravens are facing in the next round. But we'll talk about that more here in a little bit.
Yeah. That's that last bit you said. That's the scary part. The toughest matchup, at least of the teams that are remaining, maybe for the exception of the Chiefs, probably are the Steelers, because the Steelers know them better than any other team in the league. And I'll even put the Browns and the Bengals along with it, their other divisional rivals. No team prepares for the Ravens better than the Steelers. And we got a chance to see in back-to-back months how the Ravens just simply ran roughshod over the Steelers. And you made a really good point. You sort of got the sense that the Ravens called off the dogs after Henry's second touchdown run, where it's like, yeah, we got this game in hand. The Steelers offense can't do jack. We don't necessarily put more points. We could if we want to, but we don't really necessarily have to. And they coasted the rest of the way. But you're right. They could have put up. We could have seen 42 easily. We could have seen 42 in this game, and the Ravens could have put that up. Because you cannot have a performance of running 300 yards on the ground against a stout defense. That's another thing. Against a stout defense, and only put up 28 points. But I mean, that's what happened. But I also agree with you, and I agree with Dante too. Arthur Smith, the offensive coordinator of the Steelers, no, he just isn't a good fit, in my opinion. They do need to retool a little bit more on the offensive line. And I think they need another couple of draft pieces, and I think they need an impact offensive lineman. If I don't think a left tackle will be available, but if they can find any impact offensive lineman, a veteran offensive lineman free agency that actually can help speed up the process of having the line bond and having them understand what it takes to be disciplined in run blocking, I think that will go a long way toward the Steelers actually returning back to prominence. Along with what?
You guys just don't like his mustache.
Wear a brown paper bag over his face. That won't change. I mean, Arthur Smith has been a ugly. Look, I know Arthur Smith. He was a coach here in Nashville before he went and became the head coach of the Falcons. Yeah, but his office is pedestrian. So when I saw that he was going to be the offensive coordinator for the Steelers, I was like, okay, you're going to like him for a few weeks and you're going to hate him for the rest of the year. And that's exactly what happened.
I mean, people weren't disliking him for 3 months when they were 10-3. It wasn't really until they started losing the games and went on a 4-game losing stretch, now 5, where they're like, get that mustache-wearing bandit out of here, okay? All right? Now, everybody's like jumping on the let's hate Artie again. All right? And I get it. I get where you're coming from. All right?
Artie.
Yeah, you can't trust him sometimes. All right, especially when you have a nickname that the mustache bandit. All right, you got all right, you gotta give him a break. You gotta feel sorry for him when he has a mustache like that. Maybe he can't grow a beard like you or I. All right?
Why?
But the MB, the mustache bandit, he may be gone, but at the same time, can you fault the man? Is this all Artie's fault when George Pickens has 5 receptions for 87 yards and a touchdown? Najee Harris, 3 receptions for 41 yards. That's dink and dunk plays because Russ had nothing else open, so he's trying to make the best that he can out of it. The third leading receiver had 2 receptions for 37 yards and a touchdown. That was Van Jefferson. And then the remaining 5 receivers had 1 to 4 receptions, but had a total of 37 to 9 yards in comparison between those last 5 receivers. Is that Artie's fault? Is that the mustache-wearing bandit's fault? Maybe. But it might not be either.
The fact that you can tout a stat where the main running back had 2.5 times more yardage receiving than running. That is indicative of how bad of a performance that offense had, for the exception of Russell Wilson. But yeah, the mustache bandit. But that's the problem.
For an excuse to have my mustache bandit promo.
But yeah, but that's the problem in his offense. It's extremely predictable, and for some reason, I mean, he wants to run the ball, but he just doesn't effectively do it. And that was a big time issue when Henry was a Titan. Getting better ways to actually get him the ball and get him running lanes. Had issues there. They had issues running the ball when he was the head coach of Atlanta. Now, here we are. Offense coordinator Steelers having more running issues. Yeah. Oh, playmaker. He, as in Pickens, made one darn play. Pickens is an immature player. Well, we ain't disputing that. But you got to give him props. I mean, here's prime example of buffering your point. In a play that was supposed to break it open for the Steelers offense, Pickens received the bomb from Wilson, but he got called for offensive pass interference. And it was obvious because he pushed off mightily to get himself the space in the room to catch the ball. And so, yeah, he has to learn a lot of things still in order to be a smooth wide receiver in the league. So, yeah, I agree with you, but, I mean, that's just how it is. Dante says, oh, yeah, TJ Watt. He showed up to Baltimore this morning. It's kind of late. Look, man, I mean, he did the best he could. Cam Hayward did the best he could. Minka Fitzpatrick did the best he could. And all 3 of them in that game took turns being trucked. I mean, I can give you footage of each of those 3 being dominated by somebody on the Ravens offense, some offensive line for the Ravens, or either, I think it was Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews basically stiff-armed Minka to the ground. I mean, they just were dominated.
I wouldn't be surprised if Cam Hayward retires.
I wouldn't be either. I think he's at the end of his rope. I think he's at the end of his time. God, man.
Yeah, he looked gassed.
The end of the first half, yeah. I think he could have waved the right flag then.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not saying that he's a punk, he's weak. The
No,
dude
he's
has been
35 years old.
the dude has held the middle of that Pittsburgh's defense for 12, 13 years. I mean, he's entitled to wave that white flag. Look, I've done all I have to. I'm done. And I would tip my cap to him. Dante says the Steelers defense is so overrated. We blew them, talking about we as in Eagles. Blew them out as well. This isn't the prime Steelers of Big Ben. Well, no, even defensively they're not. But in terms of, and to go back to one of, and I think it was a great point that Drew said, if you had the Broncos, for example, play them, they wouldn't play the Texans in this round. They would have played them in the next round, but we'll get to that a little bit. If they would have played the Broncos in this round, or if they played the Chargers, their defenses, which is stout, both of them, they still would have issues stopping this run defense. So, and I think they would have bigger issues stopping this run defense than the Steelers defense did. And that's saying something. So, yeah, you could say they're overrated. I don't think they're overrated. I actually think they're overworked. And I think there's too much pressure on them to not just hold their own, but to actually be the unit to propel the team forward. And I think we got a chance to witness how damaging that could be in that 4-game stretch at the end of the season and Saturday. So yeah, they got eliminated. Another one and done. Another round of we should fire Mike Tomlin. No, don't fire him. Take all that criticism for him and put it into GM's feet. Since you all don't want to do that. And say, help this guy because he seems to coach up marginalized talent. What happens if he coaches up good talent? It could probably go even further. I would think it would. So I think that is where they need to do it. They need to focus, I think, offensive line. I think they need to come to a consensus on what they're going to do, not just for next year quarterback-wise, but for the future. And I personally think they need to draft their franchise QB this year. Commit to one, draft him and train him up. The return on investment money pressure. Kenny Pickett was not the guy. He wasn't. I knew that before they drafted him. He wasn't the guy. But yeah, focus on the franchise QB to be. Make a decision on the QBs you got now. Get a running back that I think would be better suited for the team than Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren. And there's nothing to them that I hate. It's just that they're ineffective. Even together, they're ineffective. And retool that offensive line. Get some fresh meat in there and get a stalwart veteran piece that can help teach that offensive line to gel and get chemistry. So they could probably run block and pass protect. I think you start there, and I believe you will be on the road to getting better. And then they can find a gym with a wide receiver. Because they got a good tight end in Frymouth. I'd run with him for a few more years. And yeah, start finding a replacement for Cam Hayward, obviously. And heck, have an eye toward finding a replacement for Minka Fitzpatrick because he's not young either. So I think the Steelers have that to work in the offseason, and they have to do that. Now, as for the Ravens, if they play like they did the first 2.5 quarters in this game, the rest of the way, you're looking at your Vince Lombardi champs. You are. Because you can't tell me a team that could slow down that rushing attack if they're that focused on making it work. And we'll get a good test as to who they're going to face, and we'll tell you who they are going to face next. I said next. Now, we'll get to the other side of the game later, but to Sunday. Oh, and what's up to you, Mickey? It's good to see you, my brother. I hope everything's good with you.
Mick!
The Broncos, who needed 3 chances to get into the playoffs, they finally got in as the 7th seed. They had to travel from Mile High all the way to Western New York to play the Buffalo Bills. And in the very first possession, we got a rookie quarterback to rookie wide receiver connection for a touchdown, the first ever in NFL history. And in the first possession, the Broncos were up 7-0. The upset was on. I said the upset was on.
That was a lie.
No, the Bills just spot on that 7 points, and they just took control of the game as soon as they scored their first touchdown to go up 10-7 early in the second quarter. This game really wasn't that close. The Bills dominated the Broncos for at least 3 quarters, 31-7. Josh Allen, really good. A really good game. Actually, the type of game I'd want him to play from this point forth. 20-20, efficient, and he didn't run the ball that much, but was effective when he ran it. 20-26, 272 yards, 2 touchdowns, 8 carries, 46 yards, and no turnovers. That's been one of the big bugaboos coming into this year with him. He's taken care of the ball pretty well this year, and he took great care of the ball yesterday or Sunday. James Cook. Now, this is something that they need to do in their next game. He needs to have 23 carries. He needs to have 120 yards and a touchdown. If they can commit to having James Cook run, I love the Bills' chances. That 120 yards along with the 46 yards from Allen, it combined for the Bills' offense, which you mentioned earlier about time of possession. How about 42-18 in this game in the favor of the Bills? 210 rushing yards, 128 in the first half. Oh, and not to be outdone, Tyler Bass, he was 3 of 3 from field goals. Now, Bo Nix, for his rookie debut in the playoffs, actually pretty good. Not as good as another rookie quarterback that I could think of that played in the playoff game. The name escapes me. It'll come to me. 13-22, 144 yards, a touchdown, 4 carries, and 43 yards. And even trick plays such as a fake punt could not bring the Broncos any luck toward chopping the wood and beating the Bills. Your thoughts on the Bills' dominating performance against the Broncos?
Well, anybody who doesn't know football would have thought that when the Broncos scored, the game was over.
Mm-hmm.
It was going up 7-0. We would have thought, hey, this game was over. But no. Bo Nix definitely looked like a rookie in this game. And the Bills took over after that first scoring drive by the Broncos. It was good for the Broncos to jump in early.
Mm-hmm.
You thought there was hope for a few seconds. But at the end of it all, you got to be able to remain consistent. And you got to keep on putting the points on the board, and that is what the Broncos could not do in this game. They definitely need some more pieces around them on offense, and definitely more help on defense. But nobody expected them to get here to this point this year, especially after what happened with Russell Wilson the year prior in the way this team was looking in 2023. You know, to be paying Russell Wilson that amount of money to play for the Steelers pretty much this year or play for some other team and move into a different direction spoke a lot of volumes. For this team to even be 10-7 to even get to double-digit wins this year was a huge victory in itself.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, if I would have been here last week, I would have said something very similar where, you know, what they did against the Chiefs in Week 18 when they won 38-0 was their Super Bowl, was their playoff run. Because if you face the Chiefs again, you're definitely not going to play like that.
Mm-mm.
If you were going to sneak an upset out of the Bills and play the Chiefs in Week 2, there's no way you were going to beat them like that because you played their second, third, and fourth string in Week 18.
Right.
And when you played the Bills this week, you saw their entirety of their first string. There was no second, third, or fourth string playing until maybe later in the game when they were up by 3 or 4 touchdowns. So looking at it for what it is at this point, you know, definitely huge win for the Bills to be able to keep things going. They needed this win, as a team that came in here as the 2 seed,
Mm-hmm.
doing what they did this year. I, from the week 1 on, have been saying it's going to be Lions and Bills, and at least my hope is still alive going into the divisional round after what the Bills did this week against the Broncos. Broncos is a very promising future, and I think that it will remain that way as long as they keep Sean Payton as the head coach.
I agree.
But going forward, this is not the entirety of the team that you're going to be able to put on the field in order to expect growing success. They're going to have to add to it a little bit more. How much more? The question is to remain. But there's not many teams in history that you can have your quarterback as your leading passer and your leading rusher and expect to go far in a playoff run. Just ask the Ravens and Lamar Jackson because of what they had to do this past weekend in order to get over the hump and get Lamar's first playoff win. They had to have a running back. So, and they had to have a running back to carry the load to make it to where they can advance to the next round by using his legs and not the quarterback, and letting the quarterback making decisive decisions in the backfield. So, looking at it for what it is, they're going to have to get Bo Nix a runner. Javonte Williams definitely has not been it in Denver, or at least this year. It's okay to be the highlight as a runner for a team that absolutely is terrible, but then when you flip the script to 180 and you're looking to get wins and you can't muster anything but some runs with your quarterback, it's not going to work out in the favor. Justice Hill has proven that you can still be a vital piece, part of a running back core like he is in Baltimore, and be a secondary piece and still have your quarterback active within the run. Everything that they wanted to do, they're still doing in Baltimore. They just found the right guy to centerpiece it all, which is King Henry. And Denver just needs to do the same, but Denver needs a little bit more help than just the running backs. They need a little more help on the offensive line. Because of Bo Nix being as mobile as he is, it's why in a very similar situation like in Washington, they're able to have success because the quarterback is mobile, as to where the year prior, even though they did make some moves in Washington this past offseason, your previous quarterback couldn't have success because he could not be mobile. So Denver and Washington did very similar things this offseason with the moves that they made in the direction that they were going in for their future. But just like Washington, unfortunately, they didn't get to win this weekend like Washington did, but unfortunately, like Washington, they still have more moves that they need to make in order to be as successful as like the Bills and the Ravens and the Chiefs have been in these past few seasons, but actually have a chance to make a postseason run. They're going to have to get to that caliber, and the only way that they can is they continue to make some more moves during the offseason.
Yeah, definitely, the Broncos are not finished. And I love the direction you're headed. Yes, they need to have that factor 3 down back to help out Bo Nix, because I agree with you. You can't have your quarterback be your leading rusher in the season. You can't do that. We've seen that with the Ravens for a few years with Lamar Jackson, and they finally said, "Oh, wait a minute, this will work better with Jackson being a runner, not the runner for our team." And let's get a piece that actually could take that load off of him. Bo Nix needs to have the same thing happen to him. I agree. I think they need to have more tools at the offensive line at their disposal. Probably need to have more athleticism there. Definitely a veteran presence for sure. I think he needs to have a reliable tight end. Look, Mims is a great wide receiver. Cortland Sutton is basically the guy he goes to. I think he needs to have that safety valve and a guy who can actually be the 6th lineman to help out in the run game. So if he can have a tight, well, for example, I mean, you see with Jaden Daniels and Ertz. I mean, whenever he needs to move the chains, more than likely he's looking toward Ertz first before he goes elsewhere or before he touches the ball and runs. That is the thing that I think Bo needs passing-wise to advance to the next level. I agree with everything else. Because that defense, you give them a more potent offense, they can make some noise and they can unseat the Chiefs being the kings of the AFC West. It is their defense is that good, and most of the pieces are young. I had a conversation with Playmaker, and he was congratulating me on the Texans, and we'll talk about them a little later. And I said more than likely we'll be playing the Chiefs. He says, "Oh, well, you're not be playing the Chiefs. You might play the Ravens." I was like, no. That would require the Steelers to beat the Ravens or the Broncos to beat the Bills. I don't see either of those things happening. And Playmaker said, well, you never know. I mean, I think the Broncos could actually do some things. And then when the devastation happened in Western New York, I got hit with this. Playmaker, I thought defense travels. What a disappointment. Well, the thing is, defense does travel, but defense needs help. You can't have an offense that barely runs it for 50 yards. You can't have that happen. You can't have a QB who barely threw for 150 yards himself in the game. You can't have that. You need to have the offense needs to help the defense out, and we'll touch on that with the Packers. That's the problem. The defense does travel, but when the defense, as good as it is, it stays on the field for over 40 minutes, you get the result that you see. I mean, that's just how it is. But look, I salute John Payton. Wonderful season. A young team, and he has them believing, and now now they have this experience, and he can build on it as they go home for the offseason. For the Bills, they have unfinished business. Obviously, they have the Chiefs on their minds, but they got a tough opponent that's standing right in front of them for Sunday night, and we'll touch on that a little later. But congrats to the Bills. They go on to the divisional round. Now, we'll go from Western New York to southeastern Pennsylvania and the Delaware Valley, where the Philadelphia Eagles at South Philly, they hosted the Green Bay Packers. Now, they played in September, and 4 months ago, the Eagles beat the Packers 34-29, and it was a more back and forth thrilling game. And of course, you remember this game because it was not played in Philly; it was played in Sao Paulo. Sao Paulo, where's that? Brazil. So they survived Brazil. They survived the season, and then they meet again. And they meet in South Philly. 22-10 was the final score. The Eagles sleptwalked their way to this victory over the Packers. Jalen Hurts. All right, Dante. I'll roll out the red carpet for you to roast Sirianni and how they called this game. Jalen Hurts, 13-21, 131 yards, 2 touchdowns, six carries, and 36 yards. He did not turn the ball over, so you have that. Saquon Barkley, who really wasn't a big factor in this game. He did have good stats, though. 2 receptions for 4 yards, 25 carries for 119 yards. He could have had more than that. He actually could have had, 170 yards if he decided to run that last run he did. But he said, look, it's more important that we just knock out the clock. So he slid and ended the run there. On defense, Nolan Smith, dude was acting as if he was playing for the Bulldogs again. 4 solo tackles, 2 tackles for losses, 2 quarterback hits, and 2 sacks. I mean, he was all over the place Sunday. And he is indicative to me of what the Eagles defense is. Just full of motors, young, and they just grind and they're aggressive, and they just never quit. And to me, that is where you have to tip your hats if you're an Eagles fan. The Eagles defense, they did their thing. And I'll touch on how much they did their thing when I talk about Jordan Love. Jake Elliott, 3 of 3 from field goals for the Eagles. And then we get the Jordan Love. 20 of 33, 212 yards, 2 carries of 10 yards. Oh, he had 3, not 1, not 2, but 3. No, not touchdowns, interceptions. Yes. Zach Bond with a pick, Darius Slay with a pick, and Quinyon Mitchell with a pick. He just simply was errant all over the field, and there was other opportunities think maybe 2 or 3 more, where the Eagles could have had picks and it just slipped through their fingers. Love was off target all game long. And in my opinion, they did not use Josh Jacobs enough. 18 carries, 81 yards of the touchdown, 3 receptions for 40 yards. And that was the death knell for the Packers. Because I think if Jacobs was used more liberally, I think the Packers would have stood a chance of beating the Eagles, because the Eagles offensively just could not connect after the gift of a turnover inside Packers territory and the subsequent touchdown that they scored. Your thoughts on the 22-10 victory the Eagles posted against the Packers?
Packers need a quarterback.
Whoa.
Yeah,
You're not high on Jordan Love? Wow.
Not anymore. Not after this game, because the way the Eagles played this game, they should have lost. Had you had a quarterback
said that. You're not the first person that said that.
When you have 3 interceptions and you only lose by 12, my opinion is it's the quarterback's fault. Because looking at this for what it was, I mean, lovers. I'm surprised you didn't sing that at the beginning of this whole thing like they did in the old broadcast, because love definitely hurt everyone. He hurt us all. Anybody who is a fan of the Packers, love hurts. We definitely got hurt in this game. Being a Packers fan, because
thank you for that.
You're welcome, because you're usually the one that serenades me. It was my turn to do it for you here today. All right? Now, looking at it for what it is, yeah, I'm trying to compose myself after that one. That was good. Now, Jordan Love, yes, he threw for more yards than Hurts Love. But here, when you look at it for what
you serenade Jalen Hurts too. Goodness gracious.
Except for one of those interceptions being tipped, the other 2 would right to the defender, like thrown right there. And when you're in that tight of a ball game, I predicted the Packers to still win this game before this game even kicked off. And I think the inconsistencies with Jordan Love there towards the end, and not leaning on Josh Jacobs enough, because the man had 18 carries and 81 yards. I mean, what is giving the ball another 4 or 5 more times going to do? Hurt you? No, it's going to help you, because you'd already been establishing the run throughout. So looking at it for what it is, all the Eagles could do in the fourth quarter was kick field goals. It was 16-10. You still had a chance when Josh Jacobs scored at the very beginning of the fourth quarter.
Right.
You didn't lean enough on your running back when you were already leaning on him a good amount throughout the game anyway. Yes. I think you should have leaned on him like what you were saying before. You should have leaned on him a little bit more towards the end, because you were the problem was the first half you didn't lean on him enough.
Thank you.
You started leaning on him more towards the end to try to make up for it, and it didn't work out in your favor. So, considering the fact that Jalen Hurts was coming back after being banged up, his numbers statistically showed you he's still banged up, and that the Eagles have a rude awakening coming at their door this upcoming week, whether it's the Rams or the Vikings. If you got to play the Vikings this week, Philly,
I feel
you're
for
losing.
you.
You're losing. I'm sorry. I'm going to say it now. If you got to play Minnesota this week, you're losing. Just like Detroit is about to have a rude awakening. They're not going to win like they think they're going to win against Washington. And we're going to break that down more here in a little bit. They're still more likely going to win, but not like they think they're going to. The battle of turnovers is going to be what this upcoming week is about, whether it's the Rams or the Vikings facing the Eagles. You have to protect the ball. Jalen Hurts did a decent job in this game protecting the ball, because he didn't throw any interceptions. You leaned on Saquon when you needed to. Okay? Saquon definitely did his job here. But looking at things as a whole, the Packers were more efficient on first down. Usually when you're more efficient with your first downs and your third down efficiency, you win the game, and they did. Okay? The difference, I believe, in this game was The Packers had way more penalty yards given up. They had 21 more penalty yards given up. And they not only had those 3 interceptions, but they fumbled the ball too. The Eagles took care of the football, and they also had the time of possession in their favor. If you can take care of the football and also win the time of possession battle, along with your first downs and so forth, generally it's a recipe for a win. The only thing the Eagles really had here was the fact they didn't turn the ball over, and they had time of possession more by like a minute. So other than that, statistically, when you look at the breakdown of this, besides the rushing attack, the Green Bay Packers should have won this game. But because you have a quarterback that cannot protect the football, that is whether it's fumbling it or he's turning it over with the interception, that's a recipe for disaster every time. It's been 2 years now that people have been dealing with the Jordan Love experiment, and I might be calling for it a little bit too soon, but I think it's time for a change of quarterback over there in Green Bay.
I don't think it's time for one yet. I think I'll say this and I'll call it out. I'm thinking what we're seeing in Green Bay with Jordan Love is the similar thing that we were seeing with LA. I really want to call him San Diego so bad. With LA and the Chargers with Justin Herbert. Of course, we'll touch on him next. I think he was handicapped by his head coach. And Brandon Staley handicapped Justin Herbert. Exit Brandon Herbert, entered Jim Harbaugh, and Herbert turns in his best season to date as a pro. Matt LaFleur thinks he is an offensive guru. He thinks he knows more offense than the best and brightest minds, and he knows it. Shout out to you, MJF. And he hurts himself. Another hurts thing. He hurts himself, and he hurts the team. And I think he passes along with Jordan Love this ability of, oh, you're just like Favre in his prime. You're just like Aaron Rodgers in his prime. You could fit throws in tight windows. You have a strong arm. You have great decision-making skills. And because of that, he puts Love in positions where he messes the team up. And I had a conversation with a Packer fan and this was at a stretch where Love actually was tightening his turnover bit. But to me, I said the only issue I have with Love is that he is turnover prone. And the Packer fan in return said to me, well, the last 3 games, he hasn't turned the ball over. I said, look, those games weren't important. Those were opponents he could actually throw against and not turn the ball over. You give me a good opponent, and I'll give you turnovers with him. Into the Eagles, 3 turnovers. 3 interceptions. 3 interceptions he did not need to throw, and there were more throws where you're like, why did you throw that? So I get why you say that it's probably time for them to push the button to get Jordan Love out of there, and it might be. I don't think it's there yet. Although, yes, they improved one more win. Unfortunately, they bow out 1 round earlier than last year. So, yeah, I get why you say may need to move on with Jordan Love. I think they need to move on from Matt LaFleur. That's what I believe.
You may claim to be the best in the world, but I'm better than you. And you know it.
There you go. NGF and CM Punk. Oh, and the resident Eagles fan, Dante Hill, he was going off the way I thought he was going to go off. He said the offense, and he's in his Brian Mac voice. I don't know what's wrong with us. I mean, Hurts, the first touchdown, and he went on lunch break. AJ thought his time was better spent on reading how to be better in himself.
What you talking about, Nessa?
I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that. What you talking about?
Talking about Nessa?
I don't want to hear Jalen was coming off concussion and missed 3 weeks. He was horrible. Both can be true. I think that's the best way I can put it. Yeah, he was coming off a concussion and he was horrible. And you pointed out something later on that I want to touch on, Dante. He says, we ain't winning with that offense. I don't understand why we didn't run the ball more. I don't either. because the opportunity was given to you to run the ball more with the Packers. Because if I were the Packers, I would have run the ball more. And I said this to a friend of mine. I said, when you have a defense that's as aggressive and young as the Eagles, what do you normally do? What does a running back hear from running backs coaches and offense coordinators? You run at them. You run at them. You run directly at them. Test their physicality. You run at them. And I said, okay, I'll ask this question. What was the best play the Packers ran? Oh yeah, that long run by Jacobs at the end of the third quarter. I was like, so you mean to tell me they couldn't do that in the first and second quarters? I'm not saying the run by Jacobs, that long run that could have happened in the first and second quarters. I mean, they couldn't use Jacobs in the first and second quarters because the Eagles, the way they were calling the game was ripe for the Packers to do just that. But they wanted to put the ball in the hands of Jordan Love, and he kept throwing picks. And I agree with you. Dante. You can't win with your offense only throwing for 130 yards in the game. And you barely use Saquon Barkley. And he got over 100 yards on his last run. You can't do that. That's not winning formula. And they know better than that. It's just, look, we talking about the Eagles. We're the only team that gets turnovers and still struggle to score. We have this offense going. If it's Detroit or Baltimore, they get four turnovers, they get 40-plus points. And we'll get to you later, Vic. He says, man, it was weird. We were up 16-3. He said, but we felt like we were down 20-3. It did. It did feel that way. He says, look, I'm ready to move on for Nick Sirianni and Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore being offense coordinator of the Eagles, which, if you ask me, I think he's being overshadowed by Nick Sirianni. That's what I believe. I believe Sirianni is actually calling those plays. He says, look, on the positive note, historically under Nick, the first play of the game is rough and then we get going, but Hurts may have to go, which is quite possible. Now, here's the point that I wanted to hit on that you touched on beautifully. This season, this is the 7th game Hurts didn't throw for 20 yards. I can't remember how many, but I think the number is like 5 or 6. It's been that many that he failed to throw for 150 yards. And you could say, well, they still won the game. Yeah. But you throw for 150 yards against a team like the Lions, a team like the Vikings, a team even like the Commanders. You can't get away with that. You can't get away with that. You just can't do that. And if you do throw for that number, you'd be surprised at how much you'll get romped. And you'd be surprised at how tired that Eagles defense will be because they would have to carry that load, and they carry that load mightily Sunday. But I'm going to have to rethink your point about Jordan Love because, yes, I agree. Love hurts. Ooh, love hurts. Well, to the Eagles, they go on. And they will host either the Rams or the Vikings this Sunday afternoon. 5. That's what I thought. So I thought the number was like 5 or 6. 5 games. 5 games. And yesterday was the 5th where he threw for under 150 yards. And only one over 3. And that was, if I'm not mistaken, and that was the Steelers game. But yeah, it's just you need to have him more involved in the passing game, less involved in the running game, and open that offense up so you can actually have the weapon that you need to do damage with, Saquon Barkley, take over. But what did Drew and I, and even you, Dante, know? But on the bright side, you did get the 12-point victory. You did eliminate the Packers, and you host either the Rams or the Vikings sometime early Sunday afternoon. So you all get the NBC Spotlight game, although it's not the game of the week, but you get the NBC Spotlight game. But for the Packers, ooh, love hurts. Ooh, love hurts. And the Packers, because of love hurting them and Packers fan, cheeseheads, bye-bye. And now, upset of the week. Now, you're probably saying, well, okay. Yeah, that game that took place Sunday night, that was an upset, right? To a degree it was, but to a degree it was not. The upset of the week, the Chargers at the Texans. You say, well, wait a minute. The Texans, they had home field, so they were favored, right? No. The Chargers were favored by 2.5 points. So even Vegas thought the Chargers were the better team. Heck, even I thought the Chargers were a better team. I mean, I'm sorry, Christmas Day, 2 points against the Ravens. That offense has been putrid all year long. That offensive line, one of the worst. And I don't know how Laramie Tunsil got a Pro Bowl bid, but he did. I'll get off that soapbox now. But this is an upset of the week because the Texans decided to shut Rex Ryan and me up to a 32-12 victory. And you're saying, well, the game didn't seem to be a rout, and it wasn't because the Chargers were actually up 6-0 before an errant snap sailed over C.J. Stroud's head. He collected it, and he threw a 49-yard pass in the waiting arms of Hudgens, I forget his first name, and that seemed to spark the rest of the team. And speaking of C.J. Stroud, 22 of 33, 282 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. And that interception went into the excuse me. Oh, sorry. I'm trying to think. Doggone, I forgot when it went the waiting arms up. But yes, he threw a pick. Should have thrown more than that, but he threw a pick. And a good play for the pick, too. Doggone it. The name escapes me as who caught the pick. 6 carries, 42 yards as well. Timely runs as he got going was in the offering. Joe Mixon, he grinded it out. And in the fourth quarter, he was the guy to close the deal. 25 carries, 106 yards, and a touchdown. He had a reception for 13 yards, but he did make the mistake of fumbling once and losing it.
Talking about Dean Leonard caught it.
Dean Leonard, thank you. And he made a wonderful play on that pick. Wonderful play. I mean, he leapt up, caught it. He was on the sideline. He had the presence of mind to keep his heel up because if he didn't, it would have been an incomplete pass. He kept his left heel up, got his right foot down, and then fell out of bounds. That was a great interception. Great athletic play. I tip my cap to you. 168 yards, the Texans on offense. And thank you, brother. They grinded it out on the ground against the Chargers. And I'll get to who really gets the nod for me in this game. Nico Collins, 7 receptions, under 22 yards, and a touchdown. And here we go. The stalwarts of the game. You could pick many of the Texas defense. That's who deserves it. Will Anderson's one of them. Tackle for loss, 2 pass defenses, 3 quarterback hits in the second half. Mario Edwards, a tackle for loss, 2 quarterback hits. He also had a second half. And the Texas defense gave you 11 pass defenses, 9 quarterback hits, and 4 sacks on the day. Kaimi Fairbairn, he was perfect, 3 of 3 from field goal range. Justin Herbert. Well, I'll get to the others. Ladd McConkey of the Chargers. He had 9 receptions, 197 yards, and a touchdown. A wonderful 86-yard reception for a touchdown in the fourth. That could have sparked a comeback, but the extra point killed all of that. Khalil Mack, who this brother, this veteran, is still doing big things. 4 solo tackles, 2 tackles for losses, 2 quarterback hits, and 2 sacks. He was holding it down to a lesser degree. Joey Bosa too, but Khalil Mack was holding it down for that defense, and they just got worn out. But you want to know a quarterback that might need to either go or needs to be tweaked heavily? Justin Herbert. 14 of 32, 242 yards. He did throw for a touchdown. I mentioned that to Ladd McConkey. He also threw a Kamari Lassiter interception, an Eric Murray pick 6 from 38 yards, and not 1, but 2 Derek Stingley INTs. And if it weren't for J.K. Dobbins, one of Derek Stingley's interceptions would have been a pick 6. Those numbers can't fly, especially if you're a team on the rise like the Chargers are. Your thoughts on this dominant performance by the Texas defense against the Chargers?
Well, it looks like myself, Rex Ryan, and we're the only ones to get this game correct because we sat here on Friday evening on Extra, and we said that the Texans were going to win this game for our man, the EP of all EPs, Cole. Okay? Whether you were predicting it correct or not, we were predicting it for you, and that was not.
That was a lie.
It was not. It was absolutely true.
What?
I mean, the proof is in the pudding. Go back and watch the video if you don't believe me. Vicola and I got this straight up.
Oh, my brother, testify.
We did.
I saw it.
We absolutely did. It was not a
Surprise, motherfucker.
when we said what we said, and it came into fruition. Now, did we think it was going to happen the way that it did? No.
No.
I thought it was going to be a little bit closer than what it was. I did not expect a rally, and that's why it was the upset of the week. It is not why I am upset of the week, but we will get to that here in a little bit.
You like that? You like that?
Cole absolutely does love that because
Yes, I do.
we have not done this yet. But believe me, it's coming. It is absolutely
it's coming in this
coming.
episode.
Because when it comes to this game that we're talking about right here,
You guys want to hear a fucking story?
story is this. Chargers did not fully show up in this game. Jim Harbaugh did a great job coaching this team this year, coaching them to an 11-6 record. Did a great job. Herbert
Yes.
did a really good job being consistent with the fact that he wasn't really turning the ball over during the season, but the fact that he came into this game and threw more interceptions in one game than he did for the entirety of the whole season.
Gosh.
I mean, it just goes to show how discombobulated this team was. I mean, that's the best word I could probably throw in there because, you know, you had no running game. Dobbins and Edwards were mixing it up pretty well throughout this year for you to even get to double-digit wins and even come back from the record that you had the previous year under Staleface, okay? Now Staleface is gone. You got Jim Harbaugh in here. He proved that, you know, he was the right hire for head coach, but the Texans proved in this game that they deserved to be there, and, you know, not only that the previous year was not a fluke, because they showed up and played playoff football in this wild card round for the second consecutive year they did. Definitely great on C.J. Stroud to do that. Regardless of the turnover that he had in this game, they still did their job. Joe Mixon paid dividends in this game because had Joe Mixon not done what he'd done, this game would have been a whole lot more close. It would have been a lot more close and would not gone in the favor as dramatically as it did. For the Texans. They proved that they needed that weapon in Joe Mixon. They needed that weapon in Nico Collins. Collins, 122 receiving yards and a touchdown. Absolutely huge because outside of Nico Collins, they didn't really have much of a receiving core on this day, even though they did have 7 other receivers that got active in this game. Xavier Hutchinson was your next leading receiver with 34 receiving yards, which is like, what, 90-some yards less than what Nico Collins had. So looking at it for what it is, big, big win for the Texans. However, based on who they're playing next week, this could potentially be their Super Bowl. And we'll talk more about that here in a little bit because there's certain things within this game that you cannot do against this team that you're going to be playing next week, like the Chiefs. Of course, you can't turn the ball over.
Nope.
That's one big thing. This is the team that you're going to be playing next week that you cannot turn the ball over for. And you not only had that one interception by Stroud, but you had two fumbles. The two fumbles by the Texans really, really scared me a little bit, because had it not been for Herbert throwing 4 interceptions, this game would have been close because you had those 2 fumbles and that interception. The time of possession definitely went in your favor. But another big thing that nobody's talking about this morning, and I overslept, woke up a little late because, we had the late game last night. I was really excited after the game, so my adrenaline was running. I couldn't go to bed until like 3 o'clock in the morning. But the things that I was watching, there's one thing that many people aren't talking about after this game with the Texans and the Chargers, or this morning, since I was checking out a few things before we went live. The one thing that nobody's talking about that really scares me going into the division round is the fact that the Texans had 86 penalty yards in this game. They had 8 penalties for 86 penalty yards. That in itself should have cost the Texans.
Me off.
Yes, and it should, because that in itself should have cost you this game.
Yes.
If you were playing against any other AFC playoff team besides the Steelers and the Chargers, okay?
Done.
It would have been a wrap. You would have lost to the Ravens. You would have even lost to the Broncos, bro. You would have lost to the Buffalo Bills.
Too disciplined.
And yes, because there's no way that you do that. It's because you're a second-year playoff team with this coaching staff, with this quarterback, with the pieces that you have around you for the most part. You've gained the chemistry to where you can make up for those moments when they happen, but you can't do them against every team. And there's like maybe an eighth of the amount of teams in the NFL that you can do that against. And in your luck, you did it against a one-year team because it's a first-year team with their coach and with the regime that they have. You do that next year against the Chargers in this situation.
You're going home.
You're going home. Yes. So that I would say that the biggest disappointments that I would say for the Texans that they have got to fix, and I don't know if they're going to be able to fix it in time to play the Chiefs this week, are you got to protect the football better, and you have to do a better job at not making the mistakes when it comes to penalty mistakes, because you did decent on 3rd down conversions. You were perfect on 4th down conversions, which was probably what helped save you in certain points of this game.
Right.
But the penalties and the turnovers are going to cost you if you don't clean that up quick, and that is the biggest concern I have for the Texans going into the division round.
Drew, either you know me very well or you climbed in my brain. I could not have expressed all of that, and I mean the good and the concerns, any better than that, because I 100% agree with you. You turn the ball over 3 times to the Chiefs, you might as well end the game there and pack up and go to Houston right then and there after the 3rd turnover. You cannot do that against the Chiefs. You cannot make that many mistakes, and you cannot draw them penalties. You cannot do that. You got to play as mistake-free a football against these elite teams as you can, and if you don't, you're going to get run out the building. And and I agree with you. They were fortunate enough to play against a team, the Chargers, where the bulk of the team, Khalil Mack excluded. Oh, maybe Derwin James excluded a little bit. Where you're dealing with baby faces, fresh-faced guys. Most of the team that never experienced a playoff game at all. So
I'm sorry, but oh yeah, the NFC East just got a little bit more dramatic as Mike McCarthy is not coming back to the Dallas Cowboys. I'm sorry, I had to.
No, that's okay. That's okay. That's all right.
I had to.
No, I appreciate that. Appreciate that.
Because Gerald deserves it.
Now this isn't going to you, playmaker. I mean, Vicala. This is to all other Cowboys fans who just seem to want to brag about them being Cowboys fans. This is for you.
Ain't nobody calling me, texting me, paging me, asking me. Delete! 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 Delete!
And to put a bow onto this entire situation,
This has been yet another beating a dead horse presentation.
one of my top 3 favorite transitions of all time.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Yes, now Cowboys fan, you can be happy. You all were a focus and center of attention in the playoffs. Oh, that's right. Your team didn't make it. Oh, Victor, this is the independent. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me do this correctly. Victor says, "Good morning to my mentors and leaders of the TFT tribe, the game hunter of Dumpster Pelicans worldwide, Sensei Drew Willingham, and the EP of all EPs, Cole Johnson. Well, it is good to see you once again, the man that we know as
Just to clarify one thing, because I was asked by somebody at work the other
Shoot.
day what it means when I reach up when you go ow. When you go ow and I do this, I'm reaching up to the heavens.
Oh, nice. I like that. I appreciate that. Yes, Kirk, I like
I can't do it like you, but I'm trying.
Well, to the news of McCarthy being fired, the resident Cowboys fan, Victor says, "Look, I'm already praise dancing over here." He says it's the end of Pennywise. He used to call Mike McCarthy Pennywise, the is it the clown in it? Yeah.
So when you're praise dancing, are you praise dancing like they are in Thriller?
Not
in my mind right now.
Not in Thriller. Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. But yes, but back to my original point. Yes, the Texans have to cut down these turnovers, and they got to cut down on penalties. They cannot, especially the offensive line, because that's where most of those penalties happen. You got some that happen with the linebacking core too that I think they need to clean that up too. But definitely with the offensive line, they are false start kings. It's like know the count. It's not that difficult. You only 20 seconds before you heard what the count was from your quarterback before you broke huddle. Know the count. Frustrates me to no end. But on the bright side, they actually had a wonderful performance in the playoffs again, and they took advantage of a Chargers team that was inexperienced, and they overwhelmed and overpowered them. And I'm glad they actually had a chance to have that type of performance, because I think we got a chance to see what this team really looks like. And it wasn't what we saw at the tail end of the season. It was not what we saw on Christmas Day. It actually wasn't what we saw 4 days before when they played the Chiefs, where they hung with them for 3 quarters, and they basically were like, okay, this team is just too good for us. We can't fool with them in the fourth quarter. We might see a repeat performance of that, but the Texans showed that they actually are a team that has some fight and some get about, as my mother-in-law would say, about them. But to the Chargers, and I agree with you, Dante. He says Harbaugh when he says Jim. Jim Harbaugh is special, and I'm excited to see what happens next. Granted, they lost, but you have to like the direction they're going now, and they have to fix Justin Turnover Herbert. I cannot agree with that more. And yes, I actually applauded when the Chargers got him as head coach, because I said then the first words out of my mouth when I saw that was Justin Herbert's game is about to improve tremendously, and it did. Now he has to actually take what he learned in the regular season and put it in the playoffs. Here's one thing that we did not see in that game that Herbert did off and on in the regular season. He didn't run the ball at all. did not have a carry himself. So to not even spark the running offense, because J.K. Dobbins didn't do anything in this game, running wise, could and did not do a thing. Herbert didn't even have a run. So you have that. So now Herbert has to turn up his gamesmanship and his game understanding to the next level, where he has to basically read quicker and read for the other 10 players on the field and say, okay, when this play is broken down and I'm against an elite team, what can I do? And not in a grandiose fashion. What can I do to advance to the next stage of whatever I'm doing offensively? And the next quarterback we'll touch on, already his rookie season, has that down pat.
So
go ahead.
I do want to bring up one thing before we do go move to the next quarterback, though.
Mm-hmm.
Based on this game right here, or in the quarterback.
Shoot.
We got Justin Herbert. You know, he threw 4 interceptions in this game. We were talking about earlier how he had not thrown but 3 interceptions in the entirety of the season. Mm-hmm. And guess which teams he did it again? He only threw 2 interceptions in 1 month, and that happened to be the last month of the regular season in December. He threw 1 on December 19th against the Broncos. He threw 1 the week prior to that against the Buccaneers. The last time he had thrown an interception the entirety of the year was against one of the biggest dumpster Pelican teams of the NFL, and that was the Panthers back on September 15th when he had 1 interception and 2 interceptions, probably one of his worst games of the year, and he happened to do it against the Panthers. From that game forward, he went, it looks like, 11 games without throwing an interception until he threw them in back-to-back games against the Bucs and the Broncos. And in the final 2 games of the year, he did not throw one until he threw 4 against the Texans. That's absolutely huge for that because, again, you're talking about fixing Justin Turnover Herbert. He did a good job throughout the regular season.
He did.
But the one thing I want to touch up on is you have to be able to do this in critical moments in playoff football.
Right.
And he was doing this and playing thankless football throughout the regular season. He needs to figure out how to play thankless football in the playoffs and just let Harbaugh manage the situations and help him over the hump with figuring out the right play to make at the right time, because this right here, you should not be having 4 interceptions when you went the entire season, 17 games, with only 3. Usually, performances like this will get you absolutely shipped somewhere else. But luckily, Justin Herbert has a lot of a better relationship with Jim Harbaugh. He's not going anywhere, at least not next year. He will be there in 2025.
Right.
One thing you brought up, too, is you got to run the ball. You have got to run the ball. The fact that between your top 2 running backs for your team, they accumulated 16 rushing attempts for only 48 yards. Yeah. That's not going to cut it. No. When you're averaging right at 3 yards per carry,
that's
you're
at 3
going to
get carry.
Yeah, you're not going to get anywhere. And the other 2 running backs didn't do anything. So looking at it for what it is, your quarterback, I wouldn't say that's not an excuse for him to throw 4 interceptions.
No,
but you're not going to have a well-balanced offense and not be able to move the chains as perfect if you can't run the ball. Besides Lab McConkey, that was the only highlight of their offense for the entirety of the day. The man had nearly 200 receiving yards and a touchdown, and he's a rookie. Okay, imagine how good he's going to be in a few years, but they're going to need to get other pieces around him. But because besides Lab McConkey, and maybe Will Dissly at other points throughout this year as their tight end, and it wasn't consistent. They don't have any other weapons to throw to, and they've been saying this about players in Washington. Washington's got more weapons around Terry McLaurin with what we saw with De'Ami Brown in Sunday Night Football in comparison to what the Chargers have around Lab McConkey, and he's a rookie. So it just goes to show that Herbert had literally nobody to work with in 2023 when he was working with Staleface. Now
correct.
you have Harbaugh, and you got rid of Staleface, and you have a rookie receiver. You need to get another receiver. Maybe it could be a rookie that could pay dividends for you next year. Maybe it's somebody you can bring in through free agency. But you not only need to do that, but if J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards are not the answers at running back, even though
There
they
you
did
go.
do a decent job during the regular season,
Thank
it's
you.
not about the regular season right now. It's
Yes.
about the playoffs, and you have to be able to turn it on. And J.K. Dobbins out of the running backs, I would have thought because he had previous experience with the Ravens, would have been able to turn it on. But it just goes to show that that's the reason why they brought in Derrick Henry and got rid of J.K. Dobbins, because he wasn't cutting it. They're going to have to find a secondary receiver to be a McConkey could be a decoy at certain points. They're going to need another running back. They're going to need to make some other moves for this offense because what they have right now around Herbert, the weapons are not cutting it. However, he's got to do a better job at his decision making.
Yeah.
Because 4 interceptions ain't going to father and cut it either, brother.
No matter when, regular or postseason. Yeah. Man, I hate this for the Chargers. This is a mixed bag because this was a successful season. I mean, this was a cultural turnaround because the culture and Brandon Staley was not all that great. The culture under Jim Harbaugh could not be more positive, and they end up with 11 wins. So that's a big plus, but the big minus is, and you mentioned it, Herbert throwing more interceptions in a playoff game than he did all year is sort of indicative too. And especially on throwing for under 50%, it also is indicative. It's indicative of course, the stout effort by the Texas defense and the defensive front. But it's an indictment against the other weapons that's around them. Other than Lion, I agree with you. Other than Lab McConkey, you really are having a hard time pointing out, who else could actually still be on this team and contribute? That is not a good thing. And yes, Will Dissly, he has the potential to be the tight end that could be there for the next 8, 9, 10 years. But I agree with you. He's up and down. Quentin Johnston, he has the ability to take tops off defenses, but the dude has problems catching the ball because he drops too many passes. He drops too many key passes. So you have that issue. It's a mixed bag for the Chargers. And I think they got to go home and they got to reevaluate how they're going to attack the upcoming season in the offseason. As for the Texans, they advance and they play the first game of this weekend as well. And they will head on to Arrowhead, where they went December 21st. They took an L. Will they take an L? We'll touch on that later. And now the game of the week, and be in prayer for your brother Drew because he might pass out from exploding. This was by far, and this wasn't even close, this was the game of this weekend. The Commanders traveling to Tampa Bay, where this was the site of their last playoff victory 19 years ago. It was against the Bucs, and the Bucs were the Bucs were waiting for them, and this was back and forth, nip and tuck. But the Commanders, they took control after some mishaps, and finally in the fourth quarter, they wrested the control of the game and got a 23-20 victory. And the reason why it's not the upset of the week for me is because the game was a lot better. Jaden Daniels, first playoff start as a rookie. It could not have gone any better. And I mean, with his decision-making, too, it could not have gone any better. 24-35, 268 yards, 2 touchdowns, 13 carries, 36 yards, and the moment never was too big for him. It just wasn't. Terry McLaurin, longtime Commanders guy, finally gets a playoff game, and he made the most of it. 7 receptions, 89 yards, and a touchdown. Or I should say, a big-time playoff game. He's played in playoff games before, but this is a big-time playoff game, and he made the most of it. I almost want to have you just go off on, and I don't mean go off, I mean just talk about the impact of one Diami Brown, because I think you might have a wide receiver of the future with him. 5 receptions, 89 yards, and a touchdown. I'll touch on, to me, probably the hero of the game later. On the other side of the Buccaneers, you almost have to feel for Baker Mayfield. I know my brother won't, but you almost have to feel for him. 15 of 18, 185 yards, 2 touchdowns, 7 carries, 23 yards, and he had one carry that was very, very angry. Even trucked Bobby Wagner. Oh, but I did mention Bobby Wagner's name. Baker Mayfield, when the Bucs were up 17-13 and they had a 4th down stop inside their own 10, after the first down pass thrown on a 3rd down conversion to Mike Evans, where he reached out and got the first down, Baker Mayfield at the worst possible time. The only turnover of the game, and that was the huge difference. Bucky Irving, good performance, 17 carries, 77 yards, 2 receptions for 6 yards and a touchdown. Mike Evans, who just simply lit up Marshawn Lattimore most of this night, 7 receptions, 92 yards, and a touchdown. All right, Commanders fan, what do you think about this game and this wonderful victory, the first in 19 years in the playoffs?
About time they figured out how to use Diami Brown, because, I mean, this is his 4th year with the team. And, you know, he still, throughout the entirety of the season, had more receiving yards than he had in any other season, but still was utilized in a very, very low light. Looking at this team overall, Jaden Daniels did very well with his decision-making, like you were saying. Mm-hmm. But the one thing that concerns me still is something that I've been talking about all year long, and that is the fact that this team is still relying too much on him to run the ball.
Yes.
Because, you know, Eckler had some decent plays throughout. He did. But Eckler was doing that, you know, as a receiver and as a runner. And considering the fact that he touched the ball 11 times and only mustered up a total of 53 yards, I think that that's underperforming there. The big thing here, too, is Brian Robinson Jr. had 10 carries for only 16 yards, averaging 1.6 yards per carry, and that's your starting running back. That really concerns me. And the fact that you only had 4 receptions for 22 yards, as Brian Robinson Jr. did, that's not enough to offset your 10 carries for 16 yards. Had it not been for Diami Brown being a complimentary piece to Terry McLaurin, who had 7 receptions for 89 yards and a touchdown, this game would not have worked out in the favor for the Commanders.
Agreed.
You know, the fact that they were able to manage the time of possession like they were and manage their offense the way they were, and it was little dink and dunk plays. It was a little run here by Jaden Daniels, followed by a 5-yard dink and dunk pass, you know, to McLaurin or to Diami Brown, or where Eckler and Ertz and Robinson and Zacchaeus were really getting used in the receiving game was through little dink and dunk passes, 3- and 4-yard little out routes to help extend the drive, but also run the time off the clock. That was the recipe for success, because if they couldn't run the ball, a little dink and dunk here, a little screen pass there, that was what they were doing to move the chains, to establish a flow within the offense. The one thing, and Cole and I were going back and forth on this throughout the game, as well as I was with many other people. My phone was blowing up yesterday like it was my mother fathering birthday a week ago, okay? Like, it literally was. Like, people checking up on my heart rate, all sorts of other stuff, because they knew that I was flipping out in this game, and I was stressed out because not only were they not establishing the run the way that I was expecting them to, a little bit better than what at least that they did, they were going for it on 4th down way too much, okay? They were – Dan Quinn was like Dan Motherfather and Campbell Jr. in this game, okay? Is what it felt like. You went for it 5 times on 4th down. I understand 2 of the 3. Two, maybe 3 out of the 5. Okay, But those two that I am really, bent about, the one in the first half and the first one in the second half, where you should have kicked the field goal and taken the points.
Yeah.
And you would have still won the game by 9 points had you done it, and it wouldn't have even come down as close to what it was. Would it have given you a little bit of a thrill, kind of like what the Packers did against the Eagles yesterday, to where gave you a little hope for the other team, to where they were up 16-10, where they had the 6-point lead? Yes, but my point with this whole thing is it would have taken more stress off of your team.
Right.
Even though it seems like the pressure moments really elevate this team, or at least elevates the play out of this team, I feel like at some point your luck's going to run out. You're going to put them into this position too much, and you're going to dig too much of a hole to where you can't get out of. Right now, they're digging themselves in holes that are pretty shallow to where they're easy enough to get out of. But you have got to, if any good successful team out there, the only way that you can get to that point is where you can prevent yourself from digging holes to where you're only going forward. So, when I look at this for what it is, you are not going to be able to go up against Dan Campbell this week and beat Dan Campbell Jr. and go for it on fourth down as many times as you did in this game and expect to win. Not only that, but you can't go up there to Detroit with this type of running attack and expect to win the game,
not even close.
Especially against this defense, regardless if they're banged up or not. Okay? Regardless if Aiden Hutchinson slides in there in time, which I still don't think he'll be back until the NFC Championship anyway. But with what Aaron Glenn has done with his play calling on defense, with what Mr. Johnson's doing over there with his play calling on offense.
The offense.
Okay. Your defense stepped up in this game, and they had to, because of the way that your offense was playing as far as your running attack. Because the only really thing you had was JD making smart decisions, not turning the ball over, and the receivers making the must-have plays in the moments when they needed to. Okay, had it not been for them stepping up, had it not been for that fourth down play in the end zone for the touchdown to De'Ami Brown, this game would have been completely I wouldn't say lopsided, but it would have gone in the favor of the Buccaneers. That was the moment where, had they not converted on that touchdown, this game was more likely going to shift in the favor of the Bucs. And I was really on the edge of my seat there, because I was like, you've gone for it and missed twice before this, and now you're going for it a third time. I thought I was losing my expletive mind, because I was like, you already did it before. But, oh, yeah, you're Dan Campbell Jr. You're not going to take the points now. You're just going to go for it. And that's exactly what happened. And luckily, in the favor, it worked out for the team then. But I'm telling you here and now that this Saturday, when they play the Lions, they cannot do that and expect to win. If you continue to play like you did against the Bucs, you're going to lose by 3 touchdowns. That's what's going to happen, and they're going to rout you. Do I think that's going to happen? No, and I'll get to that more here in a second when we get to the 2-minute drill. But the biggest takeaways I have here, and I've said this in several episodes that we have had throughout this season, is you need to do a better job at establishing the run, because that's the one thing the Bucs did better than you.
Yes,
Bucky Irving, and that was a rookie. You cannot win games like this. There's no way the Lions are even going to let you be competitive by playing like this. You still need the type of production that you did out of your receivers. It was absolutely phenomenal between McLaurin and De'Ami Brown. The fact that coming into this, De'Ami Brown's best season, he had 168 receiving yards, which was 23 and a touchdown. This year, he had 308. His numbers still are not that big, but I think this was a breakout game for De'Ami Brown, to where not only will we see him being utilized more next week, but we're going to see an increase of how he is used next year, potentially, if he's re-signed, because this is his 4th year. This is a contract year for De'Ami Brown. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see him somewhere else, but this at least shows, and it proved in this game, that you have to have somebody either step up as a 1B receiver to McLaurin, so he can have a decoy and do the things that he did in this game, because they were able to offset each other, because McLaurin had 7 receptions for 89 yards and a touch. De'Ami Brown had 5 receptions for the same amount of yards and a touchdown too. And they only did that because one offset the other, because when the other was getting covered, the other one was open and they were able to make plays. And that's why between the two of them, they had a dozen catches between the two and nearly 200 receiving yards. Like, 177 receiving yards between the two? So, putting it for what it is, you have to have that there, just like you have to have a 1A and a 1B running back in certain offenses. This one requires a 1A and a 1B receiver. You need to have some type of a running attack. And these are the things I've been talking about throughout this year, that they're going to have to make moves in the offseason, because it's eventually going to get exposed, whether it's this week against the Lions or if they miraculously squeak out and make it to the NFC Championship. They are not going beyond that, and I don't have them going beyond the division round, because they have already maxed out their potential for this year. I said that they were going to win this game this past week against the Buccaneers, and it was going to be close. I said by 3 points or less, and I was right.
on the nose.
And I've been right about a lot of the games this year. Once we got through the past month and we started to understand what the teams were really doing, I've been pretty spot on with calling this team for what it is. They're going to go to this game against Detroit, and these things that flawed them against the Bucs are going to kick them in the rear end, and I'll break that down a little bit more here shortly. Yeah. But what I can say is this: I'm very proud of them for not only getting to this point, to getting to the wild card game and putting up a good fight. I'm proud of that. I'm proud that they stuck with it and they found a way to win the game, because not a lot of people expected them to win this game. Even going into the game yesterday, people were hating on them. Oh, the Commanders are going to lose. They still are going to show their true colors. They suck. Well, you know what? At least they proved the haters wrong. And regardless if they get smack thumped, destroyed by the Lions in Ford Field this week, they still deserve to be there based on what they did against the Bucs. And I feel like they'll put up a better fight against the Lions than the Bucs would, considering what we saw out of the Bucs at home against this Commanders team.
Yeah, I have to say that well, let me talk about the Bucs first. I'm actually proud of the year they had, because they could have written the narrative that the NFC South sucked, and for most of the year it did. But the Bucs, to their credit, they came on strong at the end of the year, and they actually ended up finishing with a 10-7 record, and they were a competitive team, and they grinded out games, and they grinded out this one. It was just unfortunate they made the one mistake that messed them up, but they grinded it out. Going forward, Baker Mayfield is their guy quarterback. He just has to limit those turnovers. That's the only issue I have with him. He has a great feel for the game. He has a great feel for his team. He has great respect from them. They know he can lead them. Last year was a good example of him having a dominant win. Sorry, Dante. Having a dominant win against the Eagles in the wildcard round, and then having a good showing in Detroit against the Lions in the divisional round. But it was just a hungrier Lions team that not dominated, but that sort of imposed their will a little more than the Bucs did. So Baker Mayfield was coming into this year with somewhat house money for him, which in the NFL that hasn't happened for him, and he actually ended up being better. He just has to curb those turnovers. That's the only thing he has to do. And unfortunately, it was his turnover that spelled the difference in this game. And they did this without Chris Godwin, the normal opposite of Mike Evans. And they do have some other wide receivers that's coming up that they seem to like to utilize. So they're drafting good talent. Their offensive line is decent. It's decent. It's not the best I've seen. It's not the worst I've seen either, because they can run block the butts off. Pass protection is the problem. This the issue that I have with them. And defensively, I think they're good, but I think they're starting to be getting long in the tooth on defense, and I think that's probably where they're going to have to try to rebuild. My overall issue with the Bucs, and it was reflected it was reflected when they were on the Commanders 11, when they were down 20-17, and they were on their way to driving. And if they picked up that first down, it was 30 inches. If they picked up that first down, more than likely the Bucs was going to probably drain more clock and score a touchdown. You had the ball snapped to Mayfield, and the offensive line did not move. That to me speaks to there is an issue to me coaching wise, and I'm not putting it at Todd Bowles' feet. I'm putting it at the offensive line's feet, and maybe the offensive coordinator's feet. I'm like, how can you snap the ball, and you had the ball in the quarterback's hands, but the quarterback is now a sitting duck because you all as offensive linemen, you have your hands in the dirt and your turnstiles now. You're literal human turnstiles. Where you actually had Mike Tirico on the mic actually doubt that. Oh, wait a minute. Did the Commanders have a neutral zone infraction? No, the ball was snapped. The Bucs offensive line didn't move, and then you had 3 Commanders that just bum rushed their way, and then the awkward handoff to Bucky Irving, and the beautiful rallying to tackle from 3 or 4 different Commanders. That's the only issue that I have for the Bucs. They seem to have a position coaching issue, and I think they got to tweak that. And I think the discipline has to be tweaked a little more. Now, does that mean that they'll become contenders? Probably not. But they will probably be better able to win games like they should have last night. Because if you get the golden opportunities to stop a team on 4th down, especially in your territory, and you did it twice, and you came away with a punt and a fumble on the ensuing possessions of yours, that's problematic. So yeah, they gotta go home, and yeah, they gotta get better pieces, but I think they may need to tweak philosophies on the coaching staff. For the Commanders, I 100% agree with you. The Commanders do not, unless it's Jayden Daniels, and I hate that. The Commanders do not establish the run as well as they should. And they need to establish the run because it will help everybody else out. It most certainly will help Jayden Daniels out. It will help that defense out because to me, the defense, they seem to want to get downfield with the defensive front. And you have great savvy linebackers like Bobby Wagner, who leads the group. And even though I'm not the biggest fan of Marshawn Lattimore, I know he has talent, but I'm not the biggest fan of his. You have enough talent to where you can offset a lot of things. But of course, I would say in all seasons, you still need to draft some secondary. No question about that. But man, the Commanders have to establish the ball. They had to establish running the ball. But Daniels, in his rookie season, already understanding that he needs to involve as many people in the passing game as he should. Man, that's a big time check that normally it takes QBs maybe to the end of their sophomore year to learn. They need to do that, or their 3rd year. Oh, so I can't just lock in on one receiver. I actually have to spread the wealth. The fact he's learned this in his rookie season, that shows a lot of growth. And this is the good part. And I agree with you. This is as far as they I think were meant to go. I mean, you had a game where a Hail Mary ended one. A game where you needed a stop on a 2-point conversion. Otherwise, you would have lost that game in New Orleans. A game where you scored with 10 seconds to go against the Eagles to beat them. A game where you needed overtime and a missed field goal to set up overtime by the Falcons, and you convert that to get in the playoffs. even in the game you didn't need, you had a last possession victory for the for the for the Commanders in the form of Mariota. In this game, the doink to the divisional round. I don't know how it is you all do survive games like this, because the Commanders, they play exciting games. They're on to play the Lions, and I really, really hope that they do represent DC well and Commanders fans well. Well, that ends the game of the week, and that also ends opening drive, but that does not end the rest of the show. In fact,
All right, let's go. We got trips, right? At 42, 989. On two. Ready? Ready.
that's right. Where are my dogs at? It is time to award the grand champ of this week, and Drew, the floor, sir, is yours.
I really want to be a homer and give this to the commies or somebody on the commies, but I can't do it. I really can't. The entire Ravens offense of 299 rushing yards deserves to be discussed, and the majority of those yards came from one King Henry. Derrick Henry is my grand champ of the week. 26 carries for 186 rushing yards. I mean, this right here, for somebody who's over the age of 30, somebody who many teams passed up on in this past offseason, foolishly, when you look at the numbers that he put up in this game. They didn't even throw to him. And imagine if they did, he would have got over 200 yards. Didn't need to. Again, 26 carries, 186 yards. Lamar Jackson added 15 carries for 81 yards. And Derrick Henry had those 2 rushing touchdowns. You have to put him at the top of this list for somebody who's the grand champ of the week. And if you don't know what you're talking about out here in these streets.
I almost thought you was gonna go homer. I really did. But it's a good choice though. The running game of the Ravens, especially Derrick Henry. Yeah, great choice. 299 yards on the ground. Jeez. That almost sounds like college numbers. Anyway, well, I could go homer too, because I mean the thought process to me, I could choose between Joe Mixon and Derek Stingley, but I'm not going to do that. Shout out to you guys. You deserve it because you all are dogs. I'm actually going to pick one of Drew's, and I'm going to go with Jaden Daniels. And it's not necessarily the 24 for 35 for 268 yards and the 2 touchdowns he threw. It's not necessarily the 13 carries and 36 yards that he ran for. It is more from the standpoint of this was his first game as a rookie, and it was on the road. And he had the presence of mind to be the steadying, calming force when the team needed it most. And that last drive is what is stained in my brain. I mean, he threw a great pass to McLaurin to set up the drive itself. And then that throw to Eckler. Oh my gosh. Eckler had a linebacker draped on him, and Daniels actually threw it far enough away from the defender to where Eckler could turn around and catch it. And Eckler skirted around to the Bucs 30. And then that third down run where he could have been snatched to the ground by a matadored done bull in the Bucs pass rush, but got away from it, found the presence of mind to dart and get enough and dive for the first down. Commanders fans, I want you to understand, you have your future now with number 5. And I just pray, and I think they are. I just pray that the brain trusts of the Commanders build properly around him, because you can't waste that resource. Because if he knows what to do in key situations like that, and this is his rookie season, forget how he's going to be in his prime. Goodness gracious. But yeah, Jaden, you were a dog in LSU. You already are a dog here, and man, you came up huge. You came up huge Sunday night. Woo! Jeez.
Total football talk.
Excuse me. Wrong one. There we go. 2-minute drill. This is where we give you an understanding as to what the games are coming up. And we'll start with tonight's game that would be played in LA, but of course, there's a whole ton of wildfires there, and it got moved to the desert in Glendale. It's between the Vikings, who are supposed to be the road team, and the Rams, who are supposed to be the home team. Kickoff is at 8 p.m. all times of Eastern. ESPN, I think, carries it. Who do you have going tonight?
With this one, I think the Vikings are going to win this game, even though they are the road team. Looking at what they've done, if it wasn't for the division they were in, they would be division champs because they are in the same division as the Lions. So for what it is, can't take anything away from the Vikings for what they've done this year. The Rams may put up a good fight, but at the same time, I'm sorry, Playmaker, they're getting smacked around tonight.
Yeah, I think Playmaker didn't like me in actually saying that to him, because I figured, the loser of the King of the North battle last Sunday was going to be upset, and the Vikings defensively, I think they're going to really take it on the Rams. I agree with you. I think the Rams are going to get the better of the. The Rams are going to get the better beaten out of by the Vikings. And too bad. The Rams went from what was it, 1-4 to start the season to winning the division. Drew a tough number with the Vikings, though. Whew. Wow.
Hey. Who's giving them the business?
Now to the Saturday games. The first one, the Houston Texans, the AFC South champs, and with a win under the belt to a 32-12 victory over the Chargers, they go to Arrowhead to play the number one seed in the AFC, the 15-2 Kansas City Chiefs. And that second loss really doesn't count because they only started, Carson Wentz started the game. There you go. ESPN ABC will have that kick, and the kickoff will be at 4:30 on Saturday afternoon. Your thoughts on this game, and who do you see going into the AFC Championship between these two?
I really would like to see the Texans build on what they did from this past week and get the upset win at the Chiefs. However, I just don't think that it's in the cards for the Chiefs to lose this game at home for the division round. I would hope that it's a close game and a competitive game. But based on what we've seen this year from this Houston Texans team, and I know, it's your team and all, and I want them to succeed. I just don't think that what we've seen from them throughout not only the majority of this year, but for the first half of the game that we saw with the Chargers,
100.
I just don't think so, because even at that half, it was only a 10-6 game. It wasn't until the second half when things opened up.
Right.
You're not going to be able to play this way against a Kansas City Chiefs team and be able to come back in the second half when usually that's when they're starting to heat up anyway. I think you lose this game, and you lose by probably 10 points, maybe a little bit more. It's not going to be as close as we want it to be.
Now, if I was a ridiculous fan of this team, I would take umbrage with all of you said. But since I'm an analyst and I'm a realist, there isn't anything you said that I can argue against, and I don't want to argue against it. I remember when we began this season, I said to you, when you said to me, well, this team has the potential to actually probably do some things. They might actually be they actually might go to the AFC Championship. And I actually said to you, I don't see them doing that just yet because I think they have more lessons to learn in order to get there. And we got a chance to see the lessons they had to learn, the biggest one being maturity, because this team is rather young and this team showed a lot of immaturity all the way through. And they showed a lot of immaturity in Saturday's game, a lot of it. And that 10-6 margin you mentioned that they went to halftime with, they scored that in 55. They scored it basically in the last 55 seconds of the second quarter. So we were talking 2-minute warning. They were down 6-0 in that game. So the Texans have to play. Yeah, there's a chance they could be the Chiefs, but they have to play a perfect game. And I do literally mean they can't turn the ball over. They cannot draw a penalty. And I'm saying that knowing that is an impossibility, but that is what they have to do to beat a team like the Chiefs, because they're the most seasoned team in this field, and they take advantage of mistakes that you make. Double, especially in Arrowhead, they will take advantage of the mistakes you make. And they are disciplined. They can beat you any way they want. If you want to air it out, they can do it. If you want to ground it out, they can do it. If you want the defense to smack you around, they can do that too. And that is the issue that the Texans have. The Chiefs can beat you any way they want. The Texans can only beat the Chiefs if they play perfect from opening kickoff to final gun. They can't do that. Unfortunately, the Texans are going to learn a huge lesson on how to be and how to beat a team like the Chiefs. They ain't doing it Saturday.
Hey. Who's giving them the business?
All right. Now to Saturday night, the Commanders are 12-5 and a victory in Tampa. They take that all the way to Motown, and they face off against the number one seed in the NFC, the Detroit Lions. They also are 15-2. Fox will carry that at 8 p.m., and that is the opening kickoff. All right, your thoughts on your team, and who do you see winning?
I'm gonna get butchered for this one,
Uh-oh.
but based on on paper, talent and chemistry and what this team has built for the past few years, you would say the Lions should win this game.
Yeah.
However, I think that the Lions are going to forget what being humble is all about, because some of their fans are already showing me this right now by thinking that they are going to destroy the Commanders. Now, potentially you could, yes. But something tells me that their heads are going to get a little bit too big. One of these two teams is going to go for it on fourth down a little bit too much. And it has been historically proven that Dan Campbell Sr. does that a little bit too much. Now, Dan Campbell Jr., I think, is going to learn a few lessons from this past week, as he has done a good job at learning from the past lessons, primarily when he had that epic demise in the Super Bowl as the Atlanta Falcons head coach.
28-3?
I think he's going to learn.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
No.
I think he's going to learn from this past week's mistakes from going for it on fourth just a little bit too much. He's still going to go for it as Dan Campbell Jr., but not quite as much. And he's going to find a way to win this game by 3 points. I'm going to be absolutely wrong with this prediction, but I'm going to stay the course and stay true as a homer for the first time and very few times on this show. I'm going to be a homer today because I want to be picking the Commies to win.
Wow. So a number 6 over number 1 upset in the divisional round. Oh, okay. All right.
I've never really gone that far-fetched before on this show, but I think
Okay.
it's time for the first time for anything.
All right. I can understand that, considering that you're dealing with a team that tripled their win total from the year before. And They showed the poise they did Sunday night. I can understand why you feel, yeah, I think they could duplicate that effort, and they can duplicate it. Now, I don't think they could duplicate going for 4th down as much as they did, but they could duplicate the poise. They could duplicate bringing the fight to the opponent, and they can. And I know Daniels can duplicate being the calm in the storm and just executing when he needs to execute and how he needs to execute. Of course, I'll be rooting for the Commanders, not because I hate the Lions, but because, you know, you're my boy, and now I've gotten an attachment to him. The only thing that gives me pause is I believe the Lions are a team that is hungry. Now, I'm not saying that the Commanders are not. I really believe the Lions are fueled by that debacle in Santa Clara in the NFC Championship game last year, where they had the game in their hands, 2-touchdown lead in middle of the third quarter, and one of those Dan Campbell Sr. gambles goes haywire, and the 49ers just throw an avalanche of stuff in the Lions' way. And that 14-point deficit turned quickly into a 14-point lead, turned into a 3-point deficit very quickly. So I believe a lot of those Lions have that in their minds. They want to race it as hard and as much as they possibly can. And unfortunately, the Commanders are collateral damage. Now, do I think that the Lions are going to blow the Commanders out? No, I don't think that at all. And then the Commanders are a perfect opponent for the Lions to remind them that this is not going to be a cakewalk, that they're going to have a fight on their hands, and that they're going to have to bring forth their best effort to simply beat a team that really wants to, like you said, I think now they want to disappoint as many people as they can, not necessarily rubbing their faces, but actually just show we're not the Commanders of even last year, let alone the Dan Snyder era. We're not that Commanders team. We're not that. We're a new breed. And I can understand that. I think that is what's going to fuel the Lions to win, not blow out, but win. In fact, that the Chiefs Texans thing, I agree with that double digits thing. I don't think it's going to be close. This game will be. I give it 1 score or less. I'll say 6 points or less. But the Lions are going to have a fight in their hands. That much is for certain. But I picked the Lions to go on. But the Commanders are going to give you a wonderful fight, though.
Just got to believe. I have to believe, and I'm believing now,
Cool.
Cole.
I believe in you. I believe in your team. Just not against the Lions, though. Whew.
I don't have Aiden Hutchinson yet.
Oh, true, but they've
Even
gone
though
this
their
far.
defense has been stepping up. I just don't think they can. JD is going to be a little bit too much for him to handle.
Yeah. But I think if they
what
can,
he did against the Bucs defense.
yeah. But I think if they can quell the noise of others outside of probably Terry McLaurin on offense, and Steph, and to me, Brian Robinson must be a big cog in Saturday's game. And seeing that he wasn't Sunday, go ahead.
If they didn't beat the Eagles this past time around, I would probably be saying we're going to get absolutely destroyed, and agree with these Lions fans. But because they beat the Eagles are the number 2 team in the NFC, and deservingly so, and they beat them the way that they did. All we need is Jared Goff to throw like another 4 or 5 interceptions in one game. Okay? And it's possible. Get old B Wags over there showing his veteran presence. He's going to make a stupid face at Jared Goff, and he's going to throw an interception. Watch.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. That game happened in Houston against the Texans. Jared Goff threw for 5 interceptions. Final score, Lions 26, Texans 23. So,
with a stupid look on his face.
True, but still, that was the final score of that game where he threw for 5 picks. Yeah, the Commanders, they're going to show a lot of fight, but I think they're going to have a problem establishing a run, and I think that is what's going to be the downfall. If they could do a better job of doing that, I give a good puncher's chance of winning. I see that to be a problem. and I see that the Lions are going to establish a run with Jahmyr Gibbs. I think that's that to me. I think that's where it is. But I'm proud of you for showing. I'm proud of you showing a lot of belief in your Commanders, though. More than me with the Texans, because they're gonna get creamed by the Chiefs.
Hey. Who's giving them the business?
But that's gonna be a good game Saturday night, though. On to Sunday, and the Eagles at 14-3. They await the winner. Well, as of this program airing, they await the winner of the Vikings-Rams. Now, both of us pick the Vikings. And I'm sorry, Playmaker said, well, yeah, Drew said the same thing in week 7. And what happened? Of course, what happened? 30-20. The Rams beat the Vikings when they went to LA, and the Rams were buoyed and helped by a safety on Sam Darnold's mask. They didn't call face mask, but they allowed the safety to stand. But yes, the Vikings, I think, will advance over the Rams, not because we're speaking harshly as Playmaker. We just believe that Vikings defense is just too much. That Vikings defense is just too much. And you ain't gonna stop Justin Jefferson and have him only catch 3 catches for 18 yards like he did 2 Sundays ago. I don't see that happening. So yeah, the Rams, I think they're gonna be out. I believe the Vikings will be the team that the Eagles face. So does my partner. NBC Peacock will have that game at 3 p.m. Okay. We'll do it if the Rams advance too. So, all right. If the Rams advance, who do you see going to the NFC Championship game? If the Vikings advance, who do you see going to the NFC Championship game?
It doesn't matter who goes, the Vikings or the Rams. The Philadelphia Eagles are winning this game and going to the NFC Championship. End of story. Next.
And here's why I agree with that. Can you stop Saquon Barkley? I think that's where you have to answer that question. And then the next question after that, can your offense execute against that buzzsaw of a defense that the Eagles have, who they are statistically the number 1 rated defense in the game? If you're answering no to both with both those teams, there's your answer. And I agree with you. I think the Eagles will advance. And that's not a knock on the Rams nor the Vikings. The Eagles they're just the better team. They are. Even with Hurts throwing for under 150 yards in the game. If they don't turn the ball over like they did Sunday, they're going to beat either the Rams or the Vikings. I agree with my man.
Hey. Who's giving them the business?
All right, and then we have the game of the week. Sunday night or Sunday evening, CBS Paramount Plus will have this 6:30 p.m. kick between the Bills and the visiting Ravens. Now, October, they met in Baltimore, and the Ravens demolished the Bills 35-10. And you may remember the very first possession, actually the first play of the first possession of the Ravens, it was a 75-yard romp with Jerry Henry going to the house, and he was not touched by a Bill. And the game went downhill after that. All right, what do you see in this game, and who do you see winning it and advancing? And we both think the Chiefs are going to be the team they face in the AFC Championship.
Besides that game, it was a tough one, but it's what I saw in this past week with what their defense did in the combination of their offense. The Buffalo Bills, I don't think are losing this game at home. I think they win this game in Buffalo. I still had the Lions and the Bills going to the Super Bowl since week 1. I've been saying this. These are my 2 teams that I feel like are going, and I still believe that today, even though this Baltimore team is very dangerous, and with what they have in the backfield with King Henry, most matchups I would take Baltimore, but for what I saw this past week, with Buffalo, I'm still believing in them. I have to believe in them for my prediction's sake, and I'm going to stick with Buffalo winning at home.
I had a conversation with a friend of mine when we talked about this game, and he stole the words out of my mouth. He said, I actually believe the Buffalo Bills can win this game. I said, I'm with you. If for no other reason, the Bills, I believe, can do the same thing to the Ravens that the Ravens want to do to the Bills, which is the best defense against a Derrick Henry is to have a running game of your own. And if the Bills are committed to that, like it seemed like they were, because they gained 128 yards against the Broncos, and the Broncos are not shabby on defense, and they gained that in the first half. If they can continue that against the Ravens, the Ravens may be able to do a lot of damage, but they won't be able to do damage that they really would like, because they have a hard time stopping Cook and Allen running. And I think that is what's going to be the difference. I think the Bills will establish the run, because you can't establish run on the Ravens. And because they'll establish the run, it's going to make what the Ravens want to do difficult. And to me, and I'll say this on air, I believe the Bills will force the Ravens to make this a Lamar Jackson showcase. And I say that from the standpoint of, if you get the Ravens down, Derrick Henry will become a non-factor. And he will become a non-factor because that's how they'll call the game. And because of that, it will mean Lamar Jackson will have to throw for 300 yards and have to run for 100. If the Bills can get the Ravens to do that, game over. And I don't mean game over the Ravens win. I mean game over the Bills do. Because they'll force Jackson into mistakes too. And I think the Bills can do that. And so, yeah, I agree with you. And that, I think that concludes the 2-minute drill. But there's more. Oh, yeah.
Total football talk.
Oh, yeah, we're in a new year, but there's snowflakes that still fall on the ground. Welcome to Snowflake of the Week. And for the wildcard weekend, Drew, who is your snowflake, sir?
Just like we've been pounded over here at the East Coast with snowflakes, this team was pounded by their own snowflake, and that was the Chargers getting pounded by their own snowflake. Justin Herbert, who was 14 of 32 on the day for 242 passing yards. He did have a touchdown, but he had not one, not two, not three, but four interceptions. Quattro interceptions for Justin Herbert over there in Los Angeles. He is, without a shadow of doubt, my pick for Snowflake of the Week.
All right. Well, that's a good pick. For me, I would say Jordan Love, but I'm not going to go Jordan Love. I'm going to go his head coach in Matt LaFleur. And the reason why I'm going with that and with him, you had a game that was gift wrapped by the Eagles offense to actually take. The Eagles defense was doing great. The Eagles offense, they did not click the way they were supposed to click. You had the game in the palm of your hands in South Philly, and what do? You play into the Eagles defense's hands, where they could fly all around the field, have the pass rushers pin their ears back and put pressure on Love, force him to make mistakes, and have him throw not one, not two, but three interceptions. I would give it to Love, but I'm giving it to you because the best player on your team in that field, you only gave him the ball 21 times, 18 of them in carries, and that would be Josh Jacobs. And it took a run at the end of the third quarter for you to actually say, oh, this is what we should have done for the previous 45 minutes. So, Mr. LaFleur, you're the reason why this team is saying bye-bye for 2024. You should be ashamed of yourself because this team is more talented. But, well, you didn't allow for that to happen. So sorry for you.
As long as it's one. It's great. I love it. I hope it actually is recording. Listening to it.
All right, now this is the time of the show where we talk about the post game, give our thoughts, our final thoughts as to the week that was. And for his final thoughts and his post game, Drew, the floor is yours, sir. Unfortunately, the mic is saying it's not.
You muted. Did it again. But here and there, when it comes to this, there's definitely a pretty good matchup between teams for the wild card round. And now we have a pretty good matchup of teams that made it to the final 8. 7 of those 8 are decided at this time while we are recording, as we still have a Vikings and Rams contest. Regardless of what happens there, it has been a good weekend of football. You know, the final week of a Monday Night Football game, the final Peyton and Dumb Brother podcast show, whatever you want to call it, on ESPN tonight for the Monday Night Football extravaganza. So we had that final one. You can check me out, the final Total Football Talk extra for this season, for this NFL season. It will be episode 21. We got an extra episode in than we were expecting to have last week due to the weather, the winter storm that has been coming through. Finally, we saw the last of it, hopefully, over this past weekend, this past Friday night, and it has been clear over the past 2 days. It's definitely good for me to go to work today. And last week, with it starting, it was like the start of the winter storm. Lost a little power, couldn't participate last Monday, and it definitely got my week started off on a weird note. I absolutely hate it when I cannot start my week off by being on Total Football Talk here with Kyle. So when it comes to that, when it comes to football, I'm glad to be back here today. Glad to be able to get the football, things out of my mind and speak them with my man Cole here today, as it was definitely a fun event. Definitely appreciate Dante being back here in the chat, as he was another great one to participate in the chat last week, as well as Mick. Don't believe we saw Sick Diggy today. He must be out doing things in Norway. But between Playmaker and Dante and Mick, those of you, and even Vic Allah, who was able to come through for a little bit. Brian McCarthy was able to stop in for a second, and Corey, man, we appreciate you all for tuning in while this was live, and to those of you who tune into this when it's in the replay. And even to those of you, whether you're listening on Real Wise Radio, WQEE 99.1 FM, or watching the replay on BS3 Network, we greatly appreciate you all who tune in to give us the support, whether you're watching this on the live Monday or on the replay Tuesday. We will definitely be back next week with episode 73. And we've got many more episodes to come, as we've got more playoff football in store. And very shortly after that, the UFL will be back. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and his professional football league will be back. And so will we, to talk professional football.
Yeah, that'll be in March. That's going to be great. It's going to be great to actually cover the UFL for a second year. It's going to be great. Great comments. I agree with you. And I share the same sentiments. Thank you, Ryan, Vic Allah, Dante, the Grind. Appreciate you coming in for a spell. Playmaker, appreciate the heads up on Mike McCarthy. Thank you. And Dante, yes, your thoughts are absolutely wonderful, man. We totally appreciate you, both of us do. So now we are at the best part to me of a football year, and that is the divisional round. I think with the wild card round, you get a lot of teams that, they were fortunate enough to make it, but they will get unseated by teams that are better. And in 4 of the first 5 contests, that's exactly what we saw. We saw 4 blowouts, the home team blowing the box out of the visiting teams, and then we get the beautiful jewel that was Sunday night with the Commanders and the Bucks. Normally, you have that be the norm in the divisional round, where you have at least 3 of the 4 be closely contested, like Sunday night's game in the wildcard round would be. Hopefully we get 3 or 4. Maybe we get all 4, but more than likely we won't. But what we will get is, even in the college realm, and we'll get a chance to compare it because this coming Monday or next Monday, the national championship game will be played between Notre Dame and Ohio State. So we get a chance to see the future of the NFL there. But we also get a chance to actually compare football at its highest peak versus football not quite its highest peak, but you get a chance to see a glimpse of what maybe football will look like in 2030, 2035, maybe. The way football is now, it's a wonderful, wonderful time. And yeah, I mean, the Texas Chiefs, I think it'll be a great game, but I think we're going to be seeing things that might basically have people turn off the TV probably around the fourth quarter, where it's like, oh yeah, the Chiefs have this in hand, and doggone it, and probably hear certain things. Oh yeah, Taylor Swift, we get to see her on the screen. Refs, they have it in for the Chiefs. Who cares? Get on the field and win or lose, or go home. With the Commanders and the Lions, I think we're going to see a team that is hungry versus a team that's on the rise. And normally when you see that, you don't know what's going to take place with whoever's going to play the Eagles. We're going to see a grind them out game there for sure. No question about that. And of course, we have the battle of the MVPs with the Ravens and the Bills. I think it does not matter who, with both those guys, who is going to take home the hardware for MVP. Both of them want to hoist the Vince Lombardi Trophy in February. Unfortunately for them, they'll have one guy that stands in the way for the both of them. And he'll probably stand in the way from the both of them yet again. Well, I'm looking forward to see how these 4 games will be. And of course, we'll know what's going to happen then. But until now, let's enjoy the best of football, probably for the exception of the Super Bowl, has to offer.
As long as it's one. Oh, it's great. I love it. I hope it actually is recording. Listening to it.
All right, sir. Any final thoughts you have before we let the tribe go?
Yes.
Okay.
Detroit Lions and your fans, you need to go back a little over a decade and watch an episode of The Breakfast Club when Birdman was on it. And just like he said, you need to put a little speck on my name. You need to put a little speck on the name of the Commanders, because you are not showing the speck. I'm already seeing some things from a man hawk that I'm very disappointed about on Instagram story, and I'm going to clip this out, and I'm going to show it to you when I come into work today, because you need to put a little speck on the name of the Commanders. They're going to come in there. They might not be biting off your kneecaps like you bite off others, but they're going to be hungry too, and they're going to run around, and the game is going to be a little closer than what you think. You may win, even though I'm going to sit here and tell you that you're not. It's over. The Commanders are going to win, and they're going to upset you, and you're going to get beat by him, JD, the Heisman Trophy winner, the one who has another Heisman Trophy winner on his team as his backup. The 2 Heismans are going to come in there and kick your Heisman hiney.
Oh, so Drew is motivated by the fact Lions fan is talking mad noise. Okay. All right.
Yes. Got his expletive.
Well, hopefully you get the result that you want. I'm not saying that I will be shocked if it happens, but it'll be cool to see if it does go that way. But yeah, blowout, I don't think so. I don't think
The Lions, unfortunately, I think are going to win this game. But you got to have your fun when you can. And at least I had a few more minutes left of this season to talk a little bit more fun with the Commie Hogskins.
Well, Dante feels that feeling with you. He thinks they will go to the NFC Championship game and beat the Lions Saturday. So you have Dante with you.
That'd be crazy if it was Lions and Commanders and Eagles.
Oh, guys, Commanders and Eagles in the championship game? Oh, man.
Yeah. And then, of course, the Eagles would win that game. But I'm just saying, like, just because what my man Hawk is saying today, you're reminding me of CM Pops, okay?
Oh,
and CM Pops is someone out there who is a fake person who runs his mouth behind people's backs and not to their face. And I am D. Willie. I will run my mouth to your face. And at 5 p.m. today, get ready because it's coming.
CM Pops. Lord have mercy.
Don't even get me started with that.
What an original name. Goodness gracious. Goodness gracious. Don't get me started on actually saying.
You knew what the CM stood for, and it's not Chick Magnet.
Well, thank you, Dante. He says he has to text over the Chiefs. Oh, Lord, I'm listening to you when you said it doesn't mean Chick Magnet for you. He says he has to text us over the Chiefs. He has a feeling. Like I said, I don't say the Texans have no shot at beating the Chiefs. I think they have a great shot at beating them. I just think they have to play the perfect game to do it. Oh, Lord. Ryan says, meanwhile, somewhere in Germany, someone is saying, Speck, who ordered the Spazel? Oh, Lord. Oh, Lord. We've had a lot of fun with you guys. Unfortunately, we have to roll. If you want to reach my brother Drew, all you have to do is go on these wonderful social media handles, such as Sirtup_media on Instagram, Sirtup_media on X, at the _Sirtoba on TikTok, and of course, Sirtoba Media on YouTube. If you want to reach yours truly, all you have to do is go on to floco.com/page/host Cole Johnson. That is floco.com/page/host Cole Johnson. Oh my gosh. We thank you so much, fam. We definitely love all of you in the tribe. We love you watching. We love you listening to us. And we appreciate you. Thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing and commenting and hitting the notification bell to get all the content from Sirtoba Media and Common Media Incorporated. And we appreciate all of you. Thank you so very much. For Drew Willingham, I am Cole Johnson, here to say in parting, as we always do. In life, just like a tackle, keep your head up. And remember, you always play until the whistle blows.
Don't be like my man Hawk and drink too much of the Kool-Aid. And as always, please, when it comes to me and my man Cole Johnson and everybody else out there, please, again, don't drink too much of the Kool-Aid and stay safe out here in these streets. We love you. Stop drinking the Kool-Aid. It's the Commander's time. See you Saturday. Peace out, Kool-Aid drinkers.
Oh, Lord.